Welcome. It's good to see friendly faces here and of course make new friends. Welcome to build your own API prototype in 20 minutes with AI. All right. So before we get started, if everyone can put in the chat where you're calling from and what your current or most recent job title is. For example, I'm Emmanuel Paraskakis. I'm a company founder. I'm in San Francisco, and I've my most recent job title outside of my company was VP of Product for APIs. So let me know where you're calling from and what your most recent job title is before we get started. Put in the chat. All right, David, lead tech product manager in Missouri. Awesome. Kira, New York City. I'll be there for the API Days conference in mid-May. LA, Boston, Mexico City, product designer. Awesome to see designers here. Lots of product managers, but awesome to see designers. All right. Okay. So let's get started with our session. And this session is going to be hands-on. It's not going to be too many slides. So what I'd like you to do, if you can, is go to this link, tinyurl.com/API prototype. So tinyurl.com/API prototype. I'll put it in the chat also for you, or you can scan the QR code. It'll get you to the same place. And what this link will do is it will show you a few other links about the tools and the prompts that we're going to use today. So it'd be great if you can get to that link and be able to click on all these tools so you can follow along as we demo today, because we don't want this session to be just me talking. We want you to do things here as well. So give me a thumbs up in the chat if you're able to go to the link. It should look something like this. You should see something like this. All right, one thumbs up, two. Awesome, great. Okay, fantastic. All righty. So my name's Emmanuel Paraskakis. I'm a product manager. I've been an API product manager for quite a few years. And today I consult around API product management, and I also teach here on Maven. And in the next 45 minutes, we're going to talk about what the API lifecycle is, how people build APIs inside the API lifecycle, and how it's best to do this with OpenAPI. We'll talk about what it is. And then we'll get you hands-on to generate and evaluate OpenAPI with a model. And then we'll use OpenAPI, again, hands-on, to create your prototype, create that mock API prototype with documentation that you can use to do customer discovery, and you can show people what you think your API product should be. And of course, at the end, we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and maybe people can upvote them and so on, and we'll get to all of the questions here at the end. All right, so let's talk about the API lifecycle. And to me, what I've seen in companies that I've worked with is that people follow a path that's very similar, whether it's internal APIs or external APIs. Generally, people come up with an idea for an API product. They might or might not go out and talk to a few customers and prospective users with a prototype, and then they will design the API, build it, deploy it so people can use it. And in general, the API kind of stays stable for a while, or should stay stable for a while. And we can monitor what it does, who uses it, how effective it is. And then at some point, it's time to evolve the API and iterate, and then we'll go back around the circle once again. And what's interesting about this API lifecycle is that at the center of it, there are these artifacts that guide how we do things. They get everybody in your team on the same page. They act as the source of truth for what the API should be. And in general, without a source of truth, you will have relative chaos. People will be building, whatever, instead of building the same thing or the thing that you prototyped and agreed on with users. And having that source of truth that guides the API lifecycle is kind of like a best practice at this stage. And the most important part of the source of truth, you have other things like what your vocabulary is, your schemas, your standards that you use, and so on. But the most important thing is what's called an API description document. And it does what it says. It describes what the API should do. It's an agreement and a contract between all parties, internal and external, about what the API should do. One of the most used types of API description documents is OpenAPI. So who's here heard of OpenAPI before? Who's used OpenAPI? Maybe put another thumbs up in the chat if you've heard of OpenAPI. And if you're familiar with OpenAPI. Awesome. I see Ron is familiar with OpenAPI. It's great because he's one of the authors of the spec, so that's good to hear. All right. So OpenAPI is a specification for an API description format. It evolved from what was called the Swagger specification. And a lot of people will have heard of that because it's been around for a long, long time. As I said, it's the most widely used API description format. And in fact, there's a survey here from SmartBear, I think it's in 2023, that shows that perhaps 80% of respondents to the survey, who are people who build APIs, 80% use OpenAPI. And also what's notable is that 54 use JSON schema, and JSON schema is part of OpenAPI. So a lot of usage there, and that's why it's become really, really popular. If you look at what the document looks like on the right, you'll see it's a domain-specific language in the sense that it has keywords. It's almost like a programming language, and it will describe metadata about your API. What the name of the API is. It'll describe where your API can be found. We see this service section. It might describe things about how we secure the API. And then finally, in the green section, there it gets down to the interface, which says how the API works. In this case, we're saying, look, it's an API that you can get orders for a specific customer. And you'll get that data back in a JSON format. And you can also componentize the schemas around the API, which is what this component section is at the bottom. 3.1.1 is the latest version of OpenAPI. We'll use 3.1.0 today because it's most compatible with tools. And one of the things that I've experienced is that OpenAPI is great to use as an interchange format with tools to say, for example, once I decide what the document is, I'm going to use it to render documentation, or I'm going to use it to scaffold an API gateway. But the reality is it's very difficult and hard to write from scratch. You can have these long documents, you can get lost in the document. It's difficult to write from scratch. And it has been difficult for a while, but recently we've had advances in AI that allow us to generate OpenAPI much more easily. So today we'll use some AI to do just that. So if we go back to our API lifecycle and focus on the top right of the API lifecycle, the prototyping, the ideation and prototyping stage, if we zoom in, here's what we would see. Here's what I've seen works for others. So first of all, you've got this analysis phase, which is mostly about forming up your ideas about what you want to build. Maybe you have a strategy, maybe you have knowledge from the market, maybe you had some surveys that you did, or you're looking at your analytics for your other APIs, and you're forming up some ideas. The next step would be to put these ideas into a written hypothesis. And I would recommend that you use a format called Lean Canvas, but by Ash Maria. Anybody heard of Link Canvas? Here, you may have heard of business model canvas. Link Canvas is an evolution of business model canvas. Anybody use that? Throw me an emoji in the chat if you ever used it. If not, it's fine. Do go explore it. It's a great way, especially for API. It's a great way to form up your hypotheses. And then once you have a hypothesis, the best way to go and show others what you mean is by creating a prototype. I mean, you can create a document and talk about it, but showing a prototype, something that people can access and actually hit and use, is really the best way. Once you have the prototype, you can go and perform what's called discovery or customer discovery, where you basically talk about your hypothesis, show your prototype to users, to prospective users, and you get their feedback. And this is a loop that you should go around multiple times until you refine your hypothesis and until you have a solid idea of what you think the market needs to have. And only then should you move forward and say, well, this is going to become something that we're going to build internally. We're going to put on a roadmap and we're going to start building. So this is what your prototyping life cycle should look like. It kind of roughly follows the build, measure, learn loop that Eric Ries advocates in Lean Startup, the book Lean Startup. Shout out to Eric Ries. If you've read the book, it's a really, really good book to go and explore. So if we want to have that prototype, let's see how we can build it today with AI. And the good news about having a prototype is not only you can show it to users and show them what you mean, but then you have a solid specification about what you want to build. You can then go and pitch people internally and say, hey, we talked to users. This is what they want. Let me show you the exact thing that they want. You can use it as specification to tell your team what to build. And also what's great is once you have a prototype or a mock of the API, you can actually unblock front-end teams to go and start their development while the back-end team builds the API. And so it's powerful in more than just one way. So let's move off the slides and into a demo. And here's our scenario for today. So today we're going to assume that you are a product manager, an API product manager, and we'll assume that there's few of you, or maybe only one API product manager in your organization, and you have an idea for an API that you want to build. And your goal is to go and talk to 30 customers about this new idea and see what they think, get their feedback. And you need that API prototype that we talked about. And also, your API prototype must meet certain standards, industry standards, internal company standards, and so on. It has to be consistent with other APIs in your company. It has to be consistent with what your customers and users would expect. And it has to be maintainable and easy to use, and so on. So we'll build the prototype, and you'll iterate with the prototype multiple times, go show it to many users, and then you'll come back to your team and you'll say, I know what we want to build now. So let's get hands-on and look at the tools. So first thing that we're going to do, and you can follow along since you have all the links, is to generate our OpenAPI documents with an LLM. So remember, this was our set of links for what we're going to do, and it roughly follows the order in which we're going to do them. So first of all, we're going to use an AI model. We're going to use Gemini 2.5 Pro Experimental, which you can use for free from Google right now. The reason we're using this model is because it has what's called a very big context window, large context window. It allows us to do many things, build up a large file that we're going to need. And we'll be using the free tools today, but if we get stuck, we'll move over to paid tools. And I think it's okay for the purposes of this demo to use the free tools. You'll get much better results if you use one of the paid models. It almost doesn't matter which one. Gemini works very well for OpenAPI, but we might have to use others as well. So Gemini looks something like this. It's just a chatbot that you prompt. And from our set of documents, we're also going to look at this ready-made prompt that I have here for you. So this prompt is something that I've evolved over time, and it tells the AI model a few things. So it says, hey, I want you to act as an experienced API architect. It starts giving out requirements. It tells the model that we want OpenAPI specification 310. And it starts to talk about the standards that it should follow. You can put eventually your own standards here. I've made it simple for this demo. I just said, hey, just follow the instructions in this prompt. And we're saying that we want this API to accept JSON and send JSON. And we're getting a little bit more technical here, how to name things, what to use for security, what to do for schemas, parameters, status codes and errors, and so on. So there's quite a bit there. And the idea is we won't let the LLM build just whatever it wants. We're going to tell it what we need. So this is before even we tell it the functional specification of what we need. We're telling it the standards, we're telling it the conventions that we want it to follow. And in actual practice, you're going to substitute these with the conventions in your own organization. So you're going to eventually build out your own prompt that does this. So eventually, we get down to the spec for what we want to build. And really, it's very simple. It's that last phrase here that says, hey, build me a blog management API and use all of the above. So let's copy this prompt, and you can follow along. You can copy the raw file with this button here on GitHub. And, if that doesn't work, you can click the raw button and just copy all of this text. And then you can put it as is into your AI model in the text prompt. So we've got all of these instructions. There's probably better ways to do it. There's probably better ways to do this prompt, but this one I think will work. So I want to be able to modify this last phrase, which is about what our API is going to do. So can somebody give me an idea in the chat about what type of simple, I want it very simple API we can build? I'm tired of doing blog and task management APIs. A dad joke API. Awesome. Is it a dad joke management API? We'll just call it a dad joke API. All right. I think this is good. Let's see what it comes up with. Thank you, Tim, for that. All right. So I'm just going to submit this and see what the model comes up with. So the model is thinking, it's going through our instructions, and it's saying, well, I'm going to take into account what you told me, build a dad joke API. So it started to build what looks like valid OpenAPI, and it has some placeholders. For example, it doesn't really have a contact URL. It uses example.com. That's fine. And it uses that for the server as well. And it's figured out that probably our dad joke API is a list of jokes. So it has an operation to list all of our dad jokes, and it just keeps on going. It creates all the error conditions that we asked it to do. It allows us to create a new dad joke with a post. I can see the rate limiting information. It kind of looks okay. Let's see if it completed everything. As you can see, that's quite a bit that it's done. And of course, for yourself, you can do a different API. So Sally's saying how we can access the prompt. So Sally, yeah, thanks Leo for the link there. Follow that link, and the prompt should be there for you. And in that same repo, we have here it is, we have an API prototype.md. If you go to GitHub under Paraskakis, which is my last name, under API design, there's an API prototype.md. It has all the links in there. So let's go look at our API. We're going to copy it over, and we're going to go use some tools to validate it. First thing that we want to do is, of course, we want to know if this is valid OpenAPI syntax. So we're going to use this copy code button here, and I think the next thing we should do is put it in some kind of OpenAPI editor to see if it shows us any syntax errors. Hopefully there will be no syntax errors, and actually there isn't. That's good. So we generated about 646 lines of OpenAPI, and it kind of does, the LLM figured out that what we needed, and it kind of does what we asked it for. So it gets a list of all the jokes, list all the dad jokes. I'm wondering if there's an example of a dad joke here. Okay, here we go. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Boom. Okay, so he even did a little dad joke here for us. So first piece of good news is that this is valid OpenAPI syntax, so we have something to work off of. And I think the next thing we're going to do is we're going to just download it as a JSON file to our desktop, and then we can use some further validation tools. Those validation tools will be here in your cheat sheets. This is the editor that we used from Scalar, really good editor. And then we're going to use a couple of other tools, Rate My OpenAPI and OpenAPI Doctor. These tools are going to tell us about the quality rather than the syntax of the API. So now that we have the file downloaded, we're going to go over here to Rate My OpenAPI. It's a tool by this company, Zuplo. They do API management. And what it does is exactly what it says. It rates your OpenAPI file for quality. It has a set of built-in rules, and it can give you feedback about what you may have missed, how to improve your OpenAPI, and so on. We're just going to use a simple way today. We're just going to drop a file here and get an email with our quality score. But if you're going to use that in your prototyping process in your organization, you probably should use either the command line tool or a GitHub action or even the API that they have. They work really, really well, and they will help you automate what you do. And yes, David, it is a linter of sorts, and we'll also see a linter next, and we'll talk about other linting tools that are out there. And in general, I would advise that you use more than one of these quality or linting tools. So let's just drop the file in here, and I'm just going to pick it from my desktop, the dad jokes API.json, and I'm going to submit, and it's just going to send me an email. If I were using the CLI or the action or the API, I would get an immediate response, a structured response that I could feed back to the LLM if I needed to. But just to make things simple for you today, you're just going to do it with the email, and you're going to get the results in an email. So press submit here, and I should have it in a couple of seconds. And we'll show exactly what that looks like. So let me just go over to my email client, if I can. Here we go. And I've got a link. You probably don't see this, but I'll post the link in here. All right, so here's my link. It's returning my results with a unique identifier for that particular API submission that I did. And wow, okay. This is fairly rare. It got like 100% score, which means the models, and especially Gemini 2.5, is getting very, very good at this. And also, I'm refining my prompt as I go along. Usually, you'll see something like 80% or 85%. And so it does show 100%, but it also shows a small error. And what I could do here, if I wanted to, well, actually, let's do this. Let's take this error and put it back in Gemini and say, I get an error from my linter, and it'll go back and fix the whole thing. Probably not going to wait here for the purpose of this demo, but it will regenerate the OpenAPI file. And anything else that you want to do to the OpenAPI file, maybe you didn't like the format, you didn't like the paths, maybe you wanted to add the author of the dad jokes. You could tell the LLM and it'll fix it and it will regenerate here. But the other thing I wanted to show you is another linter, and this is called OpenAPI Doctor. Again, does what it says on the tin. It's a really, really good tool. And I think if I can, actually, I can't paste directly. Let me grab everything from here and paste it. And let's see. Well, good score. It does show some problems and a warning, and I could go fix that. It kind of doesn't like the way I did examples. It does show a description duplication. That's probably something I should go and fix. And it's showing us the line in which it is. Again, if you take this input, put it back in the model, it will go and fix everything. Now, the point of all of this is that you probably should be automating this cycle with a GitHub action, feeding it back, and so on. So Tara asks, what do you do with the response from your prompt again? Okay, let me show you this again. Here I am in Gemini. It's kind of still working away. So what I would do, Tara, is I would press the copy code button. It basically grabs all 600 lines from here. And again, you could automate this with the API for the Gemini model. Grab this, and then the next step would be I would just go paste it into a OpenAPI editor like Scalar's editor, just to check if there are any syntax problems. Like for example, let me show you. It would probably throw an error if I removed something like this. Hopefully, it would. It doesn't. It should. So the idea is that you can get some feedback about syntax. I'm not too sure why it's not doing it here right now, but you should use it like that. Another editor that you can use is Swagger's OpenAPI editor. They are changing how they do things, but it will give you warnings and errors and so on. All right. Oh, so Mark, who is the author and the founder of Scalar, says, "Hey, don't use that old editor. My bad, Mark. Use editor.scalar.com." So use that, and let's see. Yeah, I've got the right link in here, but I probably used the wrong link in. So disregard what I said. Um, so just to repeat, what we've done here is we took everything and put it through the linters, assess the quality, and then the next thing we're going to want to do is, after we generated OpenAPI, we're going to want to create a API prototype from it, a mock API. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use a tool called Mockbin, which is a really simple and easy to use tool for mocking an API. And mocking an API doesn't mean I'm making fun of the API. It means I'm creating an API that kind of looks and behaves like the final thing, but really is not code. It just renders renders responses and accepts requests in the same format as the final form of the API should do. So let me grab my OpenAPI file. And again, you should probably automate this. The JSON file goes in here. I only need to hit this create button. And what the mocking tool does is it returns me a URL. This is long URL. is where it created a mock and it hosted it. Okay. And the other thing it did is it also created simple API documentation, much like you saw in the Scalar tool. So if I hit this button, here's my simulated dad jokes API documentation in my mock, complete with the example that we saw. And what's great here is that behind this mock server is an actual fake API, if you will. So if I hit this test button and hit send, now I get a valid looking response. It's not a server that can store all your dad jokes and you can create dad jokes, but it's something that returns the right thing and accepts the right thing. Why is this useful? Imagine if you can go take this URL, and as you talk to your customers, you can give it to them and they can start hitting the API. And they can say, look, what we did here is not what I want. For the dad jokes, I want you to add these other couple of fields. And I don't want you to name the field text. I want you to name it, joke content or something like that. So they will tell you and give feedback, and then you can accumulate all of this feedback and you can make that hypothesis for your API much, much better. So instead of you coming up with what you think your customers want, you can show them and they can tell you and give you feedback. And if you do this enough, 30 customers, and refine your prototype and keep going back, you'll get a product that people will want to use. That's the whole point of the API prototype. So at this stage, we're basically pretty much done. And if I were to take, let me see if I can actually grab this URL. Here, the mock server also shows us the API call that came in. It shows the headers that it sent and so on. But I guess the other thing that I could do is take this URL, go over to my favorite API client, which happens to be HTTP at this moment, and do a get on this URL. Actually, it's a get on, what is it? Jokes. Get on jokes. Hit send. And here's my response. It's a mock response. It's an example, but it is a valid response for this API. Mark's doing his thing. Great. Thank you for that. Thank you for responding to the question. So as you can see, this could be your customer using your API, and then they can give you feedback on depending on what they saw. So at this stage, we're pretty much done with our prototype. And if you're following along, you'll also have a prototype. You can always go back, refine the prompt, tell it to do different things, put it back in the mock, hit it again, and refine it as you go along. So what are the takeaways here? Well, first of all, a model with a large context window such as Gemini, even in the free version, can deal with real-world API complexity. This is not a huge API that we created, but it has like 650 lines of OpenAPI, and it has all the errors and the rate limits and anything that you would want in a decent API. So it is a fairly big file. Second, you need to use deterministic tools to validate your OpenAPI because the LLM will make mistakes. It will hallucinate. It will do things that are wrong, so you need to validate it, ideally in an automated fashion. But if you give the LLM feedback, it will fix things, it will correct itself. I didn't show that too much today, but you can go back and try that for yourself. And you should be refining your prompt. A good prompt can get you that zero-shot result that we saw, where you get like a very good, like 100% on Rate My OpenAPI and an A+ on OpenAPI Doctor. And then once you have valid and good quality OpenAPI, you can render that mock prototype in like no time. Literally, all I had to do is upload the file to Mockbin, and boom, it produces it in seconds. And once you have the prototype, you can go use it for discovery, internal pitches, whatever you want to do. And I've even used it to scaffold PRDs or stories or diagram and things to communicate what we're going to build next. So where do you go from there? Um, Definitely try the paid models. All of the paid models are going to do a better job than the free models because they're just better models and have longer context windows. They'll give you the ability to go around and around and do this again and again and not run out of tokens. Definitely refine the prompt. Maybe you can start from the prompt I showed you. I don't think it's great. You can take it and make it your own. Make it with your own organization's standards and conventions. You should probably take the prompt and put it in your context or your projects or upload it as your standards as a file into the model. And you can even create a custom GPT in OpenAI. And definitely use the validation tools that we talked about, but there are others. There are other linters as well. And you can check this resource called OpenAI Tools. I think, yeah, this is it. And this will give you anything that works with OpenAPI. So OpenAPI tools, and it will show you validation tools, mock tools, documentation tools, anything that you might need. You can choose from there. Consider other API documentation tools like Thinio or Sudoku. Consider other mock servers from Traffic Labs or from WireMock. And definitely automate this whole cycle with API CLI or GitHub Actions. And last but not least, go watch videos from Martin Davis of Zuplo on YouTube. He's basically the inspiration for what the demo that I showed you today. He started doing this, and I kind of copied it from here. So he does a really good job exploring all these models. And then the other thing is learn. You can learn on Maven. Let me show you how you can take this further. So first of all, if you like this free session that we did today, I have other free sessions that are coming up. The next one is on April 30. It's about creating AI-powered API documentation in literally no time, like we did today. And then the next one is where we take the open API that we built today, and we'll do this with the Dajoke API, and we'll build the API out with CodeGen. We'll put it behind a gateway. And then I have other tools or other sessions that I'm doing around in MCP and agent consumption and so on. So raise your hand or thumbs up who's heard of MCP here. It's becoming very popular. All right. So check this URL, maven.com/Emmanuel. There'll be the actually, let me show you the URL. We've got the lightning lessons coming up, including this one that we just did. And then I also have a couple of courses that I'm doing. These are paid courses. One is API Fundamentals for Product Managers. If you haven't shipped an API and want to become an API product manager, this course is for you. The next one starts tomorrow, actually. So there's some time to register for that, but not too much. And then the course we're going to be talking about here in this session is API Product Mastery for experienced PMs. The demo that I did is taken from that course. So I'm doing more of that AI generation in that course. And you can also look at reviews of the courses here. So for people that attended here today, we do have a special promo code that you can use, and only for the people that are on this session, we have $250 off the API Product Mastery course that starts May 1. If you use code MOC250 or scan this QR code, you'll get $250 off, and that's only for the first 10 signups. I expect this to go within the next day or next couple of days. The people that are listening on the recording, you can use the code OpenAPI. You'll get $150 off. Still good value for it. So, go explore that course. Go look at the syllabus. Tell me what you think. And then finally, I just want to talk about what I think the API product manager opportunity is. I think APIs are becoming more and more important, and it's more and more important, especially with agents and LLMs, to get them right. And for that, we need API product managers and platform product managers. If you go look at the stats, API and platform product managers are only 5% of the total of product managers. So only 5% of us are out there doing specific product management for APIs and platform. And conversely, APIs are maybe a couple of years ago were 57%, the majority of internet traffic, and rising. That's probably higher today. And the last thing is that API product managers and platform product managers, on average, and this is from stats that I've seen, get paid about 19% more, 19% more, which is significant. So this might be a path that you might want to choose to explore. You'll become more specialized, more technical, and work on stuff that really, really matters. So let's go to Q&A. And the first question I see here, when and where the recording will be available. So this is being recorded. As soon as we finish, we're going to process the recording and we're going to send it out, I'm hoping, later today. It's going to go out in an email together with the information that was here on the slides. We'll send you the slides as well. And then the next day, I'll follow up with another email with all of the tools and maybe things to go explore more, not just the tools that we saw here, but other tools that you can use as well. So, next question. Have you developed a workflow where you have a data set already, either in a database or a spreadsheet, and you found a way to prototype and design an API around it? So, Michael, I'm assuming you're talking about actual data. So, for example, we had the dad joke examples, and maybe you want to have a database of like 100 dad jokes and use that in the prototype. Now, Mockbin won't do this, but I mentioned some mock servers that are more evolved, like WireMock, I think is able to do that, to take a data set and actually render it in your prototype. So that gets you more realistic looking data. The other way I could interpret this question is, do you have data or schemas that you might want to use and find a way to prototype it? Yes, and this is something that you probably should be doing in your organization. In the prompt or in the context, you should probably be giving the model your schemas that you want. You probably don't want the model to make up schemas, except maybe for early prototypes and early hypotheses, as we saw today. But if you have, for example, a specific way that you want to do your order schema or your customer schema or your product schema, and you want the model to use that, give it that example. And in fact, there's a friend of mine, there's a buddy of mine that's developing a product that is going to be a schema repository that you can use with OpenAPI or with models. You can reference it and say, hey, these are the schemas that I want to use. Don't use anything else, but go and generate with these schemas in mind. So I think that was your question. Okay. Ferris says, I've been trying to build a mock version of our current API. Well, now you know how to do it. Hopefully it works for you. Mark talked about the editor and the mock capabilities. It's great. Mark, thank you so much for joining here. Any other questions? So do you have any content on AI tools for SDK product management? There is a lot in the mastery course that we saw here around using AI for API product management. That's going to be there. I don't have that much on SDKs per se, other than explaining when to use SDKs, why they're good, the context of SDKs within developer experience, and so on. But there's a couple of companies out there. One of them is Speakeasy. The other one is API Matic. That, and Shane beat me to it. What they do is they allow you to take OpenAPI, just like we produced here, and among other things, produce an SDK, which is fantastic. API-Matic does this as well. I think Stainless do this as well. So you can see how when you have good OpenAPI and valid OpenAPI, you can actually use it for many things, not just the documentation or the mock, or even to build out APIs or even to scaffold the gateway, but also to build your SDKs. So that's definitely something I would advise people explore. Other questions around product management, career, around product management, building APIs, the courses, learnings, observations. All right, let me take a quick look. It looks like we're good. Um, Look, we're going to send them a couple of emails out, one with the recording later today, another with resources tomorrow. If you want to reply to those emails with further questions, I'll be there to take those questions. So that's been great, and thank you all so much for participating. This stuff is very exciting to me, and it's stuff that we couldn't do some years ago. So use the resources that we have here, use them, the GitHub repo, and go play with this and see what you can do. Go post about it. It's really, really exciting stuff. And I think the most exciting thing is that as an individual product manager, as an individual contributor, you're now way more powerful than you were. Creating a prototype and writing out OpenAPI was a pain. It could take days or weeks. And now you can do it in 20 minutes. And I think that's super, super powerful. It gives you the ability, to go do no excuses customer discovery, as we should, to build great API products. All right. Thank you all very much. And have a great day. And come see us at one of the future free Lightning lessons. Thank you. Thank you for attending.